Hello. Today we discuss Michael by William Wordsworth. It's a lyrical ballad, and it's the story of a shepherd who lives in northwest England, tends to his sheep, has his wife and his son with him. The piece is quintessential romantic poetry for three reasons. It's pastoral. Second, it speaks of the beauty of nature in terms in which the poet exults when he speaks of how beautiful the landscape is, in tune with the shepherd exists with his sheep. And third, the piece is about the emotions of a human being, his innermost thoughts, the struggles, the travails, the trials of the life that he's leading, his expectations and unfulfilled dreams. The story is set in the heart of Lake District, where Michael lives in tune with his surroundings and has all the skills required to be a good shepherd. There is a twist in the tale. Michael is bound in surety to his nephew, and the nephew comes upon bad fortune in his business, and thereby Michael is summoned to now pay up a penalty. It is a heavy sum, and Michael feels that there is no other way but to sell his ancestral land. But somehow this thought does not go down too well with him. So he comes up with another solution. He thinks that my son is young now, and let me send him to London so that he can make it big in the city, come back with that sum of money, and the ancestral land can be saved. So this is his dream, his hope in life. And as the son is leaving, Michael decides that they will start to build a sheepfold together. It's a project that he feels will tie the son to the land that he belongs to, also to the family, and therefore the son would come back. The son would remember his promises and would keep them. So they start building this sheepfold or sheep pen together. A sheep pen where sheep are kept, the enclosure where sheep are kept. So they start doing this together. And William Wordsworth, in a very poignant, in a very sentimental and emotional tone, tells us the story of Michael, this shepherd who lives in this beautiful village in England. Will Michael be able to fulfill his expectations? That his son will make it big in London, he would come back, pay off all the debts that the family has to pay. So will he be able to save his ancestral land? And most importantly, will his son keep up the promise of returning to the native village and fulfilling the responsibilities that have been thrust upon his young shoulders? To find out, stay tuned to Pratyancha and watch all the Michael videos with us. My name is Neha and you're watching this video on the Pratyancha channel. We have done many other pieces by William Wordsworth, the names of which you right now see on your screen and the links to which are in the description box below. Let's discuss Michael by William Wordsworth. William Wordsworth in Michael takes us to Grasmere Vale, a valley in northwest England and set within the Lake District. A beautiful district defined by rugged mountains, by lush green valleys, and by blue placid lakes that grant as much serenity as beauty. He gives us such a wonderful experience of the landscape that a lot of people have gone trekking to this area to figure out the exact location of the cottage where Michael the shepherd lived. You can also do that if you wish to. There are lovely directions available on the internet to reach this particular spot and then to let your imagination run wild, because you would see this absolute beauty around you and you'd be able to feel that how these words Wordsworth wrote after an inspiration he got from the nature and the beauty that he saw around himself. So he begins to say, if from the public way you turn your steps up the tumultuous brook of Greenheadgill. Greenheadgill is this river or this small brook which is running across the mountains, and he says that you have to walk uphill. Now Greenheadgill is located in the Lake District. If I were to first show you the location of Grasmere Vale or the Grasmere village in the Lake District in UK, you can see that on your screen right now. And then let's zoom in to see the Lake District where this particular village is located. And also we shall see a general view of this Lake District. On your screen you see the quaint cottages, houses dotted on the landscape, the greenery, the hills in the backdrop, and of course Wordsworth is taking us on a journey uphill as we follow the path of a river. So he says that you have to turn your steps from the public way. You don't have to take the paved road inside, because you're now to go into the rural heart of England. And then you will come to this tumultuous brook. Tumultuous, the river is really rushing down and there is a lot of energy to it. There's a lot of dynamism to this small river, and you're walking uphill. So it's an upright path and your feet must struggle because you're going uphill. In such bold ascent, the pastoral mountains front you face to face. And as you're walking, you see this beautiful view in front of you with the mountains at the back, and you're also walking uphill. So these pastoral mountains, they confront you face to face. This is a view constantly that you will be subject to, or that you will be a part of, or that you will see as you are in this particular location. Then he says, but courage, for around that boisterous brook, the mountains have all opened out themselves and made a hidden valley of their own. So yes, we have to summon courage to walk uphill, to be in this spot, and also to live in a region like this. It requires courage. And this boisterous brook, again, first he had used the word tumultuous and now he uses boisterous. There is energy to the river waters, there is dynamism to the river waters. They're not flowing very quietly, but they're making sounds, they are jumping over perhaps the rocks, and they are going forward with a lot of energy. So these mountains open themselves out and there is a hidden valley that you see. No habitation can be seen. When Wordsworth goes there, he feels that the place is not populated at all perhaps, and if at all there is someone living, then it's not easy to find a community of people living, or it's not easy to see an entire area occupied by people's houses. So he says no habitation can be seen, but they who journey thither find themselves alone, with a few sheep, with rocks and stones and kites that overhead are sailing in the sky. So you can see some sheep grazing, you can see some birds in the sky, there are rocks and there are stones, but there isn't a lot of human presence that you feel in this landscape. So up till now he's been setting the stage where his story would unfold, where the drama of Michael's life will come to be staged. So he's told us about this landscape in Grasmere Valley. He's told us about how it is the Greenheadgill, the river that you walk along to reach this place where Michael's cottage is located. It is in truth an utter solitude. So someone who lives there would live in utter solitude. He wouldn't be in touch with a lot more humans around him. It is not a social or a community setup that you see. Nor should I have made mention of this Dell, but for one subject which you might pass by, might see and notice not. He says that the Dell is the valley where he has brought us on a tour almost, and he says, I will not mention this Dell were it not for something specific I wanted to tell you. But what I want to tell you, you might actually see it and even pass by it without really noticing it. So it's not something that catches your attention very specifically. It is not something that is of tremendous importance in the scheme of things, and yet there is a story I would want to share with you regarding this location, regarding this valley that I have brought you to. Beside the brook, so on the side of the brook, beside the brook appears a struggling heap of unhewn stones. Beside the brook, there is a heap of stones, and they don't seem to be in any particular order, and it's a struggling heap, as if they are almost struggling to keep up whatever little structure the pile of stones has come to espouse. So there is a struggling heap of stones that he sees alongside the brook, and he's going to tell us about it. And to that simple object appertains a story unenriched with strange events, yet not unfit, I deem, for the fireside or for summer shade. Wonderfully, the author here tells you that I'm going to tell you a very simple story, and that concerns this pile of stones that you see next to the brook. And the story, you must not expect some kind of mystery, some kind of strange events that would occur, or in other ways in which stories can entice you. It's a very simple story. And yet he says it is the kind of story which on a winter evening, sitting by the fireside, you perhaps would share with your family or with a friend. Or it is a story that in the summer months, sitting under the shade of a tree, a long afternoon and you're spending it with your loved ones or with your friends, and you're going to share that story with them. So it's a story worth telling. But let me tell you, there are no strange events or unexpected things or some mystery or suspense that I would bring to you by way of this story. And then he says that I'll tell you why I'm going to tell you this story. It was the first of these domestic tales that spake to me of shepherds, dwellers in the valleys, men whom I already loved. So it's a domestic tale. It's the story of the house of a shepherd, the person who lives in this vicinity, in the hills that I brought you to. And I love these beings. I love the shepherds and their simple life, not verily for their own sakes. And it is not just because I like them as people, what they do and the life that they live, but largely because, but for the fields and hills where was their occupation and abode. So I love them because they live in this beautiful, quaint setting of these mountains, this lush valley, these rivers, and I love them for where their home is. And that is why I'm going to tell you this story, because their lives interest me, their domestic life interests me, but at the same time, it is this location, the landscape, the fields and the hills that I'm really drawn to, and I would want to tell you a story about this life which unfolds in this landscape. He goes on to then say, and hence this tale, and so I write this story, and hence this tale, while I was yet a boy, careless of books, yet having felt the power of nature by the gentle agency of natural objects, led me on to feel for passions that were not my own, and think at random and imperfectly indeed on man, the heart of man and human life. He says that it is not that I've dreamt of the story in my adult life, but this story has somehow been growing inside me since the time I was a boy, because he must have been visiting these hills or this landscape, and he feels that it was a story that has been growing in him since the time as a little child, as a little boy, when he came to these hills. I was careless of books. That time I wasn't reading stories in books, but I was constructing my own impressions of the world in visiting these places. And then I felt the power of nature, and there was this gentle agency to natural objects. Gentle agency? The hills or the rivers or the trees or the valleys don't force you to perceive them, don't impress their character upon you, but very gently, in being who they are, in standing in the wonder of their nature, they appeal to you. They somehow occur to your perception in ways that they leave a deep imprint on your psyche. So this gentle agency of this natural beauty, I felt that led me to think of passions that were not only my own, but I started to think of the human condition. So yes, I thought about myself and about the way I was living my life, but because of the power of being in nature, I also started to think deeply about who a human being is, what he or she feels, why he or she exists. And then he says that I'm not saying I was right all the time. I used to have these random thoughts which were imperfect in nature, but I started to think about man, the heart of man, and about human life. So this is where the story started to take form inside of me many years back. Therefore, although it be a history homely and rude, I will relate the same for the delight of a few natural hearts. He says that it's a history of someone's life, the story of someone's life, and he says it's homely, of course, because it's a story of a home, but it's rude. Why does he use the word rude here? The poet is saying that I'm going to tell you some thoughts and events that are so private to a person's existence that perhaps it is not right to be broaching them, it is not right to be discussing them. And yet, because they speak of the human condition, I bring them as an example of a human life to you, my readers. But he's very conscious that he may be doing something which is not very polite and which is a little bit rude. And yet he says, I will relate for the delight of a few natural hearts, and with yet fonder feeling for the sake of youthful poets. So you, my reader, who relates to the nature, you have a natural heart, and I think you would like listening to this story. But I also tell this story for poets, for poets who would come after me and they would be inspired by my writing, and with yet fonder feeling for the sake of youthful poets who among these hills will be my second self when I'm gone. I'll be gone, but I'm sure other poets who visit these hills and then read my words would be inspired. They would also feel that they have the same connect to nature that I had. They'd reinforce their own connect with nature with my words. They would somehow feel that they have reaffirmed that, oh, if I feel this, then I'm not alone. A poet before me called Wordsworth has already felt this and put it into words. So I write this story to appeal to you, my dear reader, who has a natural heart and perhaps would delight in the beauty in this poem, and also for poets who would follow me. Upon the forest side in Grasmere Vale there dwelt a shepherd. Michael was his name, an old man, stout of heart and strong of limb. His bodily frame had been from youth to age of an unusual strength. His mind was keen, intense and frugal, apt for all affairs, and his shepherd's calling he was prompt and watchful more than ordinary men. So he starts to tell us about the hero of his tale, and the hero is a shepherd. He lives in the valley called Grasmere, and his name is Michael. He's an old man, stout of heart. So he has a very strong body, a strong heart, strong limbs, strong heart, and from youth till old age, he has had this almost unnatural strength to him, unusual strength to him. He has lived in surroundings which expected him to possess a great amount of bodily prowess, and that test he has stood true to. So whether you look at his youth or whether you look at his old age, his body was always very strong. His mind was keen, and also the mind was something that was not just intense, but it was frugal as well. It did not waste itself away on spurious matters or on flimsy matters. It was always thinking about things that were integral to his life and to the continuing of his patterns and rhythms of his daily existence. So his mind was intense, it was keen, it was frugal, apt for all affairs. He was able to think through everything that his context challenged him with. And in his shepherd's calling, he was prompt. He was very good at the work that he was doing, and he was very watchful as compared to ordinary men. So the poet has set the stage for us in telling us of the landscape where he places his poem. He has also set the stage for us in telling us that why he tells us this story, though it be very simple and not filled with some strange kind of events. And then he introduces to us the protagonist of the piece, Michael the shepherd. So we shall continue this discussion in the next video, where the poet shall tell us of the various facets of Michael's life, how Michael is in love with the job that he does of a shepherd, how Michael is in love with the natural surroundings that he lives within, and about his family, his wife and his son Luke. So do stay tuned. If you like this video, do give us a thumbs up. You can also follow me on Instagram. My handle is @pratyancha.in. So I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.